to be back. Happy to be back doing our knowledge building workshops and really happy to see the parents here today. I'm looking forward to engaging with everybody, and I'm excited about our guest and some of the information that we'll be sharing. So we get this, we come up with these different ideas of what we think, from our experience as parents that parents would be a benefit from. But also we took a lot of the feedback that we got from previous knowledge building workshops, as well as from our parent, we call them our parent champions or our parent mentor group, to inform, the topics that we cover for knowledge building workshops. So in case you're not familiar, I don't know why I can't advance to the next slide. I don't know what's happening today. Oh, there we go. Oops. Before we go into the land acknowledgement, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here and just say that this is one of 4 different capacity building workshops or knowledge building workshops that we'll be hosting over the course of the school year. And so this one is on assessment and evaluation. So I think I have to turn it back over to Malaika to do our statement of truth and land acknowledgement.
Yes, Statement of Truth by Tiki Mercury Clark. The decade for the people of African descent, speaking truth to our experiences in Canada. Our significant presence in Canada, documented since 1605, demonstrates that our contributions predate the country by over 150 years. Indeed, up until 1961, over half of all Black people in Canada were born on this land. Our ancestors were also part of the fabric of Canada. Learn of that. Our sweat, skills, experiences, and contributions were taken and used without consent and for free, built and shaped early Canada. Albert Jackson has undoubtedly pushed and carved Canada into the powerful promise that it is today. Learn of that. People of African descent are resilient, brave, spiritual, and master builders who have been central to the campaign for equality and an equitable Canada. Our new goal, African truth-telling, starting today. Learn of this. La décennie internationale des personnes d'ascendance africaine met en lumière nos expériences au Canada. Notre présence significative au Canada, documentée depuis l'an 1605, démontre que nos contributions précèdent la formation du pays de plus de 150 ans. En fait, jusqu'à 1961, plus de la moitié des Noirs vivant au Canada y étaient nés. Nos ancêtres ont également contribué à la mosaïque du Canada. Sachez-le. Notre dur labeur, nos compétences et expériences exploitées gratuitement, sans consentement, ont façonné le Canada. Par exemple, sachez que Albert Jackson a sans aucun doute collaboré à la structure du Canada très prometteur d'aujourd'hui. Sachez-le. Les personnes d'ascendance africaine sont résilientes, braves, main-d'œuvre et spirituelles et ont joué un rôle crucial dans la campagne prônant l'égalité et l'équité au Canada. Notre nouveau but? Raconter la vraie histoire des Afro-Canadiens. Dès maintenant. Apprenez ceci. We, two ancient and durable peoples, Africans of the motherland and indigenous of Turtle Island, have shared in a mutually respectful and long-standing alliance. Outside interference in both the progression and the telling of our story has caused a memory lapse in that knowledge. We who transport the latent past into the public present in order to awaken the recall stored within our DNA, exposed to all present, that we two peoples conducted international trade with one another for numberless generations. We reveal to all that from time to time, groups of our folks sailed here and were welcome to reside alongside Indigenous folks as neighbors on Turtle Island. The rapport between our two people groups has persisted for 2,500 seasons and more. As people of African descent, We offer this land recognition and solidarity with the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions towards decolonization. We acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that was never meant to be owned. We recognize that most of the land that was entrusted to the Indigenous peoples was in some cases shared by choice, but all too often taken by force. We recognize the historical colonialism and the ongoing colonialism that has led to the present day situation where land acknowledgements are offered in place of land. As people of African descent, many of us have come here by choice, while many are here as a result of historical force. We acknowledge the complexities where we were promised land that was never given by those whose it never was to give. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its Indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. Ashe. Claudette?
Thanks, Malika. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to share a bit more about Parents of Black Children and more on the United Parents Project. And so as one of the first initiatives under Parents of Black Children, we had the United Parents Project, which is funded by Trillium. And so these capacity building workshops were meant to support parents as they try to navigate for their children in the education system. The second of the three parts of this project is the system navigation, which we've expanded out to our school, to the School and Family Advocates program. The idea is to have someone who's highly skilled and knowledgeable in navigating the system to help support parents. And so, you know, in turn, building upon that village. And then lastly, our Black Parent Mentorship Program, which helps parents with a similar age children, school age children, to be grouped together, partnered in an effort to have more, a more focused group type conversation and learning around education and children's educational experiences, and how as parents, they can build a support network and strengthen parents within their within their broader networks. So we meet once a month on Saturdays, really just intentionally building that knowledge so that they can spread that information across the community. So really exciting. Something else that's just on the horizon, sorry for the quality of that photo. So the OMO Afrocentric Virtual Campus is the first of its kind. It is, if you haven't seen it, we'll add a link, I think, to the chat so that after you will be able to have a look. But it is essentially a learning platform for all students, but centered on Afrocentrism and African cultures. It showcases all kinds of learning that students can go in and engage in. It's kind of like Roblox. I don't know if you've heard your kids talk about Roblox, but it's kind of like Roblox. But it is basically a learning space virtually for Black children. And it's incredible. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, we will send a link so that you can view it on your own or view it with your children later on. Children love it. We have many, many children registered to be a part of it. And you can pretty much do it any day, go on all day, any day. But we also, through that platform, offer scheduled tutoring Wednesday to Friday from 4 to 7. So if you, we'll put the link in the chat so that you can register, and then you can select times where you'd have a virtual tutor that will come in and support your child with homework, or you can, sign up regularly to have regular intervals of learning support for your child. So so please take advantage of that. The next thing I touched on it a little bit was the SFA program. So the Student and Family Advocates program is actually a ministry funded program Ministry of Children and Community Services, but it was designed based on the system navigation rule that we initiated in September. So this is an initiative where there are 17, including ours, 17 school and family advocates across the province that are essentially system navigators. They're going to be helping to support families. Parents of Black Children is leading some of that work in terms of building the community of advocates, but they are all assigned essentially across the province. So for more information, you can visit that site, studentsandfamilyadvocate.com, to find out where there might be an SFA in your area. Okay. So goals for our session, we want to get into it. By the end of today's workshop, you'll have a deeper understanding, or we hope that you'll have a deeper understanding of the different types of assessment and evaluation practices used in schools. You'll have tools to effectively advocate for fair and transparent assessment of your child's learning and be empowered as learning partners in the assessment and evaluation process. So we know that schooling is a partnership. Education is a partnership involving students, teachers, and parents and other school staff as well. So we want to be a part of that. We want to help you to feel confident to navigate those spaces. And so our presenters today will be Sharon Gordon, Soini Downs, and Ayinola Akinrola. And they are going to participate throughout the session today to share as much information as we can. We've been really intentional about building this, and we hope that you walk away with enough information. And if not, always reach out. You can always send us an email for support. And as we mentioned, the session will be recorded and sent out as well.
So our first expert this evening, a person sharing from their expertise and experience here, is Sharon Gordon. She has over 15 years of classroom teaching experience in family studies and social sciences, English and geography departments at secondary level. She was the kindergarten to grade 12 equity consultant at the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. And she's a parent of 2 awesome humans, a daughter and a son who are thriving and pursuing their dreams. She is a lifelong learner, living equity. Sharon?
Thank you, Malika. I do have to say that this is an honor and a privilege to be here and to be presenting to you a quick backstory. I met Claudette in a course that we both took last term called Black Feminist Thought. And it was a life-changing experience. So this idea of lifelong learner is quite accurate for me because I've been away sort of from formal education for a little bit, even though I'm immersed in the educational world, so to speak. So I'm pursuing my Master's of Education. And so Claudette and I met. We've had many engaging conversations during that course where we looked at the work that she's doing with parents of Black children and the other organizers, and it's phenomenal. So we're hoping we can, I don't know if anyone on the call right now is from the Hamilton Wentworth area, the Hamilton area, but services are needed definitely west of Toronto, let's just say that. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just working through, I want to make sure I'm timing myself so I'm not taking up too much of everybody else's time. So Claudette, if you wouldn't mind just going to the next slide, please. So we're going to take a look at a few things with regard to assessment and evaluation, and reporting. You'll be looking, hearing from some of the presenters later on. The Growing Success document came out in 2010. So, it's, 11 years old at this point in time. However, it does speak to the purpose of assessment and evaluation and why it's important, the foundation of assessment and evaluation is for no other reason than to ensure your child is learning, that every student is learning. And so there are particular parts of the document that are of particular importance when you're thinking about for your child, how are they being assessed and what are they learning, how are they being assessed and how are they being evaluated. Another click, please, Claudette. So the first thing that I'd like you to know is about learning skills and work habits. And so on the report card, there is a section that looks at learning skills and work habits. And I want to tell you from the perspective of an educator that it's a subjective category. And so the responsibility of the educator of the teacher is to ensure that learning skills of responsibility, organization, independent work, collaboration, initiative, and self-regulation is known to students prior to engaging in learning, so that they know what it looks like to collaborate. And another thing about learning skills and work habits is, and I say subjective because we already know that students who are Black and Indigenous and racialized are assessed very differently and evaluated very differently in the school system. So what does responsibility look like for a Black child or organization, and how is that assessed? Learning skills and work habits are there for growth. They should not be evaluated on, so there should be no grade attached to learning skills and work habits. That being said, there are some courses in secondary curriculums that do tie very closely with some of those learning skills. So in those cases, yes, there'll be a grade attached to a learning skill, but that should be very clear, made very clear to not just your child, but you, if you need to know about it. So it shouldn't be a surprise that there is a grade attached to perhaps collaboration, okay, or organization, if that's woven into the curriculum. Achievement chart, categories of knowledge and skills. So these 4 areas of knowledge and understanding, thinking, but also thinking and inquiry, communication and application, in any assignment or in any task, they're generally interwoven. So it's not just one thing. In some cases, so I've taught family studies, I've taught food and nutrition, for example. If we're doing a food lab, that is very much an application. The curriculum speaks to the application part of that course, or in that sense in the food lab. However, there's still knowledge and understanding, knowing how to measure, knowing what ingredients are used and that sort of thing. And so generally speaking, teachers should not be really parsing out all of these different categories of learning. They should be interwoven into the assessment. Next click, please. Thank you. So what do you need to know in terms of how your child is achieving? And so levels of achievement, level 4 is exceeds a provincial standard. And I purposely put level 4 first before level 1, because this is where, as a teacher, I always wanted my students to go. And this expectation, this high expectation, is where your child's teacher should want them to go. Level 4, so you're exceeding the provincial standard. Level 3, you are at the provincial standard. Level 2, approaching it. And level 1, you're below the provincial standards. And I have to say, I've been doing a little bit of work on de-streaming grade 9 math. So I've been working on that since earlier this year. And the grade 9 math course, there's no longer an applied or academic. It's one open course, so to speak. And so what I've been reading about as well is something called grading for equity. So how, in many cases, teachers have been using the 0 to 100% scale as a grading scale. So your child might get 59% on a test or an assignment, or 75%. And the thing that I've been learning, and many educators are now moving towards, is that a 0 to 100% scale is inequitable, because very rarely does your child, and this is where we want to really stress that what what students are bringing to us in the classroom is knowledge that they have gained from growing up, from their life experience, from what their awesomeness, from their curiosity. And there's very, very rarely would you find a child that does not have some knowledge that can be applied to a particular curriculum expectation in any course. So grading someone from 0 already puts them at a deficit. So there's much work that's happening in our school board in Hamilton, and perhaps other school boards, where we're looking at something called a 4-point grade. So you're not starting at 0 or a deficit. You're starting at, okay, what have the students brought to us? And that's something that's you might want to look out for when you are speaking with your child's teacher, is where do they sit on, you could call it the 4-point grade, or evaluating from 0 to 100%. Okay. Next click, please, Claudette. So in elementary school, there are 2 reporting periods. In secondary schools that are semestered, there are 2 reporting periods for each semester. In non-semestered schools, there are 3 reporting periods. In our school board, we actually have 3 reporting periods, but we are a semestered school board in many cases. So what happens is probably around maybe 6 weeks into the semester, we do something called preliminary reports. It's a progress report. So you're looking only at learning skills, and you're looking at how well the student is progressing, very well, with difficulty, or well, I think. So what that does in that preliminary report is gives parents an opportunity to see, okay, well, things are going really well. This is good. I shouldn't be too worried that my child is keeping up, and the learning skills that are being demonstrated are supporting the learning. Then there's a midterm report that comes probably closer to the 9-week mark. Of course, everything is different right now. We have a quadmester model, and so everything is condensed. But generally speaking, around the 9-week mark, there's a midterm report. And at this time, it's a great opportunity to see where the students are. You can see where your child is. The comment section lists, of course, should talk about the strengths that your child has, and should as well talk about any next steps that the teacher sees is necessary. If you see the comment section with just a couple of sentences, then it's problematic. They should also be looking at connecting the learning skills, but also speaking to expectations that have been met or not met or covered. And in that way, you can see, okay, this is what my child should have been learning, and they're having difficulty with it, or they're succeeding, but they should also connect to how the teacher has come up with this mark. So, I used to list assignments that we've done in where they have demonstrated the expectation. Or also, I used to talk in the language of conversations and observations, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But what am I seeing and what am I hearing that also shows me that the student in my class is demonstrating these expectations. It's not just pen and paper tasks and assignments. A colleague of mine was saying, you know, if a student can Google the answer, then, you know, what kind of assessment is that? So thoughtful, in-depth questions that allow students and allow your child to think about what they're learning and how they're applying it is ideal. And one more click, please, Claudette. So in the case where your child may have an IEP or an individual education plan, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, in that case, there may be alternative learning expectations. So they may be assigned a particular course, but the expectations are not attached to the curriculum because they have been accommodated or modified in some way, actually accommodated. And so in that case, you should not be expecting your child to come home with sort of grades attached to that. And you should know this if they have an alternative learning, an IEP that has alternative learning expectations, it should be clearly stated. And then teachers should not be evaluating that or assigning a grade to those alternative learning expectations. Okay. Next slide, please. So the individual education plan. So students who have exceptionalities, and sometimes parents hear about an IEP and they get really panicked because they think it means that it's going to be detrimental to their child. It's a legal document, and it is created with you, the parent, usually a learning resource teacher, and sometimes if the principal is available or an administrator available, but not always. But it's not created for your child without your input. Your input is very valuable. The IEP should be reviewed and updated at least every year. And that's, when I was in the classroom, our learning resource teachers would be asking us, okay, what strategies have you used to help this particular student? Can we use them? Can we add them to the IEP? Nothing gets added or sort of signed off on until you, the parent, say so. So you have a lot of control over this. Students can be designated gifted and they'll have an IEP. They could also have varying needs and what we call exceptionality. So things that need like additional time to complete a task or an assignment, additional location to write their test. These things can be written into the IEP. They can look at the way they learn best. So maybe they need a device that will take their speech and put it in text. Maybe they need a computer, access to a computer or a device to write their test or to write their answers because they're much more able to use the keyboard than they are to use a pen or a pencil and write their responses. Maybe they need oral, they need to give their responses orally and have a scribe write down what it is that they're trying to articulate. So there are many things that you can have in an IEP. Another thing that's really important is that accommodations and or modifications to the curriculum expectations must be followed by the teacher. It's not oh, this little document is here and this student can get by without it. In some cases, students are reluctant to, sometimes they're reluctant to follow sort of the recommendations on the IEP. And then a conversation should ensue between the teacher, the parent, the student, the learning resource teacher. Okay, so the ongoing evaluation, if you will, of the IEP is important. Students, and every year or within that year, every semester, It should be checked to see if maybe there are things that can be changed. It lists the student's strengths, it lists their needs and those sort of things. And teachers have to follow the IEP. It is a legal document. So once you know you've been part of that process in creating the IEP, you are also still attached to it as it changes, as it goes through. In many cases, as your child goes through elementary school to high school, there are developmental changes, cognitive changes. That's why the IEP obviously needs to be developed. Strategies that they've developed to ensure that they learn this way, and maybe these accommodations are not needed so much. The IEP can take them through as well when they go to post-secondary, when they go to university or college. Knowing that they have particular needs is always a benefit. What the IEP should never do is presume that your child is a lower academic standard. So the high expectations are still held for students who have IEPs. And it's very important that, that parents still remember that and advocate for that. If teachers start to feel that, oh, so-and-so has an IEP and it means they're not able to learn in academic. And I'm hoping we'll get rid of that, the streaming quickly. But up until now, we still have streamed English and science and geography and history. So it's important to know that even though a student has an IEP, they can still be in a high academic course and have high academic expectations. Next slide, please. So the types of assessment that you may hear conversations about. So diagnostic, formative, and summative. So a diagnostic is really what a student would do. So just so the teacher knows kind of what they learn and where they're going before instruction starts. Formative is something that is ongoing throughout instruction, and summative is at the end of period of learning. This is where the grades will come from, a summative assessment. Again, we can't stress enough the fact that assessment really is about improving your child's learning. If that's not happening, then what's the purpose of the assessment? Next slide, please. I think you may have to give it a click. Yeah, thank you. So I don't want you to get too sort of caught up in the language of assessment, but just to know that there are various types. So assessment for learning, so where this is diagnostic and formative, there should be no grades attached to this type of assessment. The teacher is checking to see where the student is to sort of plan out where they will be going, the strategies they will be using for the learning in the course. One more click, please, Claudette. So assessment as learning is really the part where students are learning how to peer assess and how to self-assess their work. And it shouldn't be expected of students to peer assess or self-assess unless they know what the learning goal is and the success criteria. So what are they learning? What should they be learning? And there should be some instruction on how to give a peer assessment and how to give a self-assessment, okay? And this is sort of, again, formative. This is just to support their learning. It is not to assign a grade to. And one more click, please. Thank you. And assessment of learning is where the marks come from. So this is where the grades are being assigned. And with the next slide, we'll just talk a little bit about how grades and evaluation and grades are assigned or created. I've been talking too much. So next slide, please, Claudette. Thank you. So one of the things you want to know as well as parents is where are these grades coming from? And something that we've been looking at closely over the last few, I would say, years, is something called triangulation of data. So basically it's that educators, so teachers should not just be looking at products as a way to assign a grade to a student. So a product would be a test, a final exam, an assignment, something like that. That's important in many cases, but students don't always perform the best under those circumstances. So observations. So the learning that is seen in the classroom, what is the teacher seeing that shows, that demonstrates those expectations have been met? Lots of observations can happen. Students are drawing, are doodling, are putting their learning into action. And those are the sort of things that teachers have to be adept at. And as parents, you can also say, okay, so what did you observe? How did my child sort of demonstrate that learning goal or that curriculum expectation? And conversations, another great way to ensure that the student is actually learning and not just regurgitating, just spitting out what it is that the notes that they've taken, or the notes that the teacher has said, or what the teacher has said. How are they articulating? How are they speaking about what they are learning? And that's a great way. And the conversations that they might have with their classmates, the conversations that they will have with the teacher is also important. So one-on-one conferencing, whole group conferencing, there are, small groups. The teacher should be moving around, COVID notwithstanding, should be moving around and listening for how students are, how your children are speaking about what they're learning. One of the things too, grades are not set in stone. There's been many times where student has come back and completed an assignment for me, and I've gone and completed a grade update form, something like that. I can't remember what it was called, but the grades are not set in stone, and there should always be room for improvement and an opportunity to have multiple times to demonstrate an expectation. There's something called in the Growing Success document, we speak about most recent, most consistent learning. And that works for many, many curriculum areas, but some are not conducive to sort of most recent, most consistent if the expectation has only been touched on once. So the idea is to have expectations woven in and your child have multiple opportunities to demonstrate them. And so there's many times where their mark can be improved. And that's professional judgment, that's based on pedagogy, that's based on what's best for student learning. Next slide, please. Thank you. A couple of things that are of particular importance in secondary school. So credit rescue, it might be called something different in different school boards, but we have it just before the end of the semester. So before the end of the course, students have an opportunity built into sort of a student success team that would support your child. They have an opportunity to meet expectations they may not have met thoroughly, or they may not have met at all. Okay, so they have those options. So credit rescue. Options to recover a failed credit, again, not a done deal, not set in stone. So a failed credit will trigger something called a failure report, where teachers have to show in our school board what expectations have they met. And so that the credit recovery process, if that's the choice, will be that they can just demonstrate the expectations they haven't met to get the credit. But they can repeat the entire course if needed. They can go to summer school, night school. Credit recovery is the best because it can happen, while they've moved on to perhaps another semester, another course, but they can still meet the expectations of the course that they failed. So it's never just, okay, let's walk away, you failed that, forget it. There are opportunities to regain that credit, to gain that credit. And one more click, I believe. Great, thank you, Claudette. So some questions that I think you'll get the slide deck, so all of these questions will be available to you. So how has my child's grade been determined? What opportunities did I have Did they have to demonstrate the learning, the skill, the task, all of those things? Where is the feedback to improve learning? Always remember that that's what feedback is for, and that's what assessment is for, to improve their learning. Where is that? When was the feedback given? This is something that's really important, because we as teachers should be giving ongoing feedback and descriptive feedback, not necessarily with a grade attached to it, but with information in it that could improve your child's learning. And that is key to empowering them to make changes to what they need to do, or to even to the way they've absorbed that content, right? And this is particularly important as well, because there's probably no school board in Ontario that doesn't have sort of a focus right now on anti-Black racism, anti-racism, culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. So all of these terms really speak to what equity and anti-racist informed assessments and grading were used. So using that language lets the teacher know that you understand that it's not just the same harmful colonial Eurocentric way of learning and curriculum that is being shared, that it's their responsibility to ensure that your child sees himself reflected in their learning. And I think that might be it for me. But I'm happy to take any questions. I think we're going to save questions till the end of the presentation. Correct me if I'm...
That's correct, Sharon.
Okay.
Yes. I feel like everyone was really absorbing all the key points that you were sharing there. I feel like people might be reflecting on that and kind of weighing what you were sharing against their own experiences with their children in the various school boards that people are coming in from. Again, if you've got questions that come to mind, folks, feel free to put them in the chat. The recording of this presentation and these slides will be shared. So if you have questions that come up afterwards in reviewing as things percolate a little bit, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing. And we thank you for staying on to respond to questions at the end of our session.
Malika, can I quickly just jump in and just
sure can.
Set the record straight? Sharon, you were awesome. All the things I was thinking about, like, oh, is she going to say this? And then you just say it, which I love when that happens. Just wanted to just reiterate that the Growing Success document is a provincial document. So regardless of what school board your child attends school in, this document should be used. It should be relied upon for assessment and evaluation practices across the board, like no matter where your child attends. So elementary, secondary, it's all, so it will actually, hopefully it's a large document, but I'm thinking that we can share it with you. We have a link that we can share that will give you the opportunity. I think that's the best thing. It is a large document, like I said. I don't want to take away from the other presentation times, but just to make sure people know that there's no choice here. It's not like maybe we will, or we do this here, but we don't do that. Like credit recovery, assessment, evaluation, reporting periods, everything that Sharon spoke about is applicable across the province. So I just want to say that.
Yeah. And actually the slide, in the slide deck, the image of the Growing Success document, when you click it, it'll take you to that document. So, and I think it might be there in other forms too.
I believe throughout the evening too, that's going to be referenced by Sweeney as well as Ianu. So there's our opportunity for, as they call the circular curriculum. So Sharon's mentioned it and the links there, it's going to be talked about. Now I know Soy's going to mention it and Ianu's probably going to reference it as well. Sorry, did you want to add anything else, Sharon?
No, that's good. We can chat at the end.
Okay, awesome. Up next, we have Soini Downs. She has 20 years of elementary teaching experience in a range of areas. She is a very experienced reading intervention teacher and workshop facilitator. Soini?
Right, take myself off mute. Good evening, everyone. Go ahead, Claudette. All right. So, despite having more than 2 decades of experience in education, I still have to steel myself when I speak to my children's teachers. I have a son in grade 4 and a daughter in grade 3, and I have touched base with their teachers. And I still, all now, have to figure out how I'm going to do this in a way in which is effective. So that's why this code is here. Courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. And I'm a big fan, you can switch, Claudette, of doing it badly until you do it well. But your first time out of the gate is not going to be perfect, but that's not the point. You develop the skill as you keep going. So I'm going to continue on what the journey that Sharon has put us up on. So we really need to disrupt assessment acceptance, this idea that whatever the teacher has given your child, that you just need to accept. If more is going to be demanded of our children, then we need to demand more evidence of, oh, I can't see. More evidence of assessment. No, we good. Go ahead to the next one. So, as was just mentioned, this is policy. This isn't something that you're pulling from the sky. These 2 documents are large, but there are a couple places that you can refer to. Page 28 really does talk about, I'm going to get you to flip or keep going. It talks about the truth. The primary purpose of assessment is to improve student learning. So exactly what Sharon was saying. If you say, well, how did you get this mark? And they only have one piece of paper, they show you one thing. Well, then you have to ask, exactly where did you show me or show my child where they were and where they need to go, because it is a process. And along the process, there is documentation that the teacher should have that shows that they were in conversation, including your kindergarten child. So when we think of kindergarten, there's this notion that it's play. Well, the play, when done effectively, is intentional and deliberate. In the play, the educator is naming and noticing the learning that is going on. And they are talking with your child about the learning. And through that interaction, they're setting up the learning goals and success criteria, which they will meet later on in the curriculum. So it is important that if you have a child who's in kindergarten, or you know somebody who's in kindergarten, that you let the parent know that there are notes, or there should be anecdotal notes on your child that you get to ask for. You get to say, show me, how are you looking at and examining my child's learning? There are many ways to capture thinking. You can keep going. When we think of kindergarten, you can capture your child's learning through video, through transcripts, through art. There are a myriad of ways. So when you are in conversation with your child's teacher, you get to ask them for these. So to ensure that assessment, evaluation, and reporting are valid and reliable, there has to be transparency. Teachers should be, keep going, communicating clearly at appropriate points throughout the school year. So if you're finding you've hit this point in the school year and you're not sure where your child is, I know that I've had to reach out a couple of times just to ensure that we were on the same page, because the difference between primary and junior can be quite different. And so I needed to know, or we needed to know, exactly what was going on in the classroom. I'm going to encourage you, many people might have a Google platform or a Google Classroom. Check it regularly. There are things on there. So anyways, you have the power, use it, ask questions. The first time you ask questions, you might not know what quite to do with the answer. That's okay. You'll get better with the more practice that you have. So you get to ask, tell me more about this evaluation. What data? So what did you use to get it? And then that's all you say. Then you wait for it to be produced. Now it's COVID. No big deal. Technology is our thing. You can send me a picture of what my child's learning. You do have that power. Please use it. Keep going, Claudette. Teachers should be using a variety of assessments, projects, discussions, rubrics, anecdotal notes, tests, art, and it should be spread over a period of time to provide, please hear this, many opportunities for students to demonstrate a full range of learning. So once again, when you gather the courage to ask, then you are looking for more than one piece of documentation, not only end products, but again, notes, video. Lots of teachers are taking pictures at this point. And I really am speaking largely from a K-6 standpoint. That is my area of knowledge. So you can ask, what are the different ways you use to assess my child's learning? And you stop and you wait for the answer. One of the ways that has proven effective is that pause. You don't have to overtalk this. You're asking for evidence. You're asking for evidence because we know that our children, a lot is demanded of it. So then that opens the door for us to demand quite a bit as well. Next one. Teachers should be providing ongoing feedback that is clear, specific, meaningful, and hear this, timely, to support improved learning and achievement. So if the only time you are getting back any information is 2 weeks before the report card, that is not timely. But we know that in growing success, it says needs to be timely. You have to make this so that a child can grow, because the primary purpose is for your child to grow as a learner. You ask, when did you discuss this with my child? Where are your notes that shows ways to improve? That's a big one. Where are the notes on my child's work? Keep going. As I put on that slide, it is uncomfortable. I find it uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Write down the answers. Snap pictures. Many of us have phones, use them. A teacher should be developing a student's ability to understand where they started, where they are now, and where they need to be. Most importantly, how to get there. So you should be able to ask your son or daughter or somebody in your village who you are supporting, what's going on? And then how do you get even stronger? How are you going to strengthen? And when done effectively and ongoing, the feedback allows your child to say, this is where I am, and this is where I am going. So you ask, how did you help my child set specific goals to improve their learning? Show me. How did you help them plan next steps for their learning? Show me. It's not a lot that you're saying, but it's important for you to say, tell me, show me. What data did you use? They're small, but they're powerful words. Next one. Okay, so in the learning skills, it is more of the same. What opportunities did my child have to talk about their learning and get help setting specific goals right across the board? Responsibility, independent work, initiative, organization, collaboration, and self-regulation. These learning skills are incredibly important. And they will be talked about next, but these really have a currency that often can go undervalued. This is not to say they can't be weaponized. That is for another conversation. But there is gold in these learning skills, and there's gold in asking questions about it. So right back to some of the very same questions that we started with is that idea of asking the teacher just how they helped your child figure out where they were across the learning goals and how they were going to get even farther. Go ahead, Claudette. So I'm going to end with, I do my best because I'm counting on you, counting on me. One of my favorite quotes, Maya Angelou. So I am done for now.
Thank you, Soini, for delving into the types of conversations we need to have with our children's teachers and making that connection between what Sharon said, it's how the different parts of assessment look when they show up on the report card and how we can address those at those different stages with kindergarten all the way through to secondary. I do believe on the slide it says there's a link to a survey, but I know next we've got Ianalua, who is about to share from her knowledge and expertise as well, another passionate educator, helping us understand more about assessment and evaluation. The feedback form, I will mention now, the feedback form I will put in the chat towards the end of Ianalua's presentation so that it'll be there and available as you are thinking about your comments, your questions, or any feedback you'd like to share with us to make our sessions even better and help us to serve parents better as we go forward. So Ianalua is an educator with 10 plus years of elementary teaching experience in the elementary levels. She is a co-professor at Trent University, Faculty of Education. She's got experience in the social emotional learning and social justice in math education. She's a mentor for racialized youth facilitator and speaker. She's a PhD student, and like all of our other presentators, I cannot speak this evening. Like all of our other presenters, she's an all-around wonderful person. Ianalua.
Hey, thanks so much, Malika. I think I love that word, presentators. And I'll hold on to it, presentators work.
You're welcome. That's a gift I share with everyone.
Right? I feel like presenters, it's overused. Let's say presentators from now on. And I would just like to reiterate, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And the speakers that went before me, Sharon and Soini, has covered so much. So for this evening, I'm just going to really talk about the onus that not lies in us as parents when looking at and working within the education system with our children, particularly when it comes to reporting. And just a quote that was at the beginning of this slide, I just want to bring our mind back to it. It said, it takes a village to raise a child. And I'm of Yoruba descent, and I've heard my parents talk about it so often, used it in so many different contexts, but really and truly it applies very much so, particularly when guiding your child, your Black child, through the system that really was not intended for them to succeed, right? Achieve above expectations within it. And one of the tools we can use is understanding the report cards, understanding the assessments that do come home, and being able to work with our children at home while collaborating and communicating with teachers to ensure their success. So I mentioned it in her presentation and what she shared with us, the importance of the learning skills. And throughout my years of teaching experience, I love to come back to learning skills with parents because it is one of those parts in the report cards that I find is often overlooked. Progress reports are going to be coming out soon. They are coming out in November. And oftentimes when parents come in, or oftentimes when parents attend parent-teacher interviews, they just gloss over the learning skills and move right into the math and the literacy and the phys ed or the arts or whatever it may be. And sometimes I just sit there and I say, wait. A lot of your questions are based, we need to set up a foundation, and let's go back and look at those learning skills. So in the K to 8 and the 9 to 12 stream, we're looking at responsibility, initiative, and I'm not saying them in order by any chance, but responsibility, initiative, collaboration, organization, self-regulation, as well as independent work. I always miss one, independent work. And why is that important? Well, learning skills are study and thinking skills, and they're a critical part of your child's learning. As was mentioned with the previous speakers, educators are, as part of their assessment, are meant to observe, are meant to interact with your child, are meant to be through conferencing, conversations, group work, whatever task it is they're completing, to see the ways, not only the product your child is producing, but the ways in which your child learns, in ways in which your child demonstrate their learning and interpret their learning. And it should be made evident in the learning skills. So when reporting on a report card, your child's teacher should first and foremost highlight their strength. Are they a wonderful independent worker? Are they able to take responsibility, be it academically, when working with peers, even sometimes outside of school? Maybe they're part of an extracurricular, not right now because of COVID, but maybe they're part of an extracurricular that they show those responsibilities in, and what are those transferable skills that can then support them in subject areas, be it math, be it health, you name it. Those learning skills do translate in that way. And I just had a short video here. For the sake of time, we won't be able to watch it, but it's York University students talking about learning skills and how they had not paid attention to it in K to 12. And now in their undergraduate year, their first year, they're realizing that, you know what, I'm lagging behind, I'm struggling, I'm having a bit of, I don't have the systems of support in place that I need because my learning skills foundations was not there. So I just want to encourage parents to read the learning skills, have conversations about those. How does my child, as I mentioned, ask for evidence, right? If the teacher sends the report home saying that needs, so there's E, which means excellent, G for good, N for needs improvement, S for satisfactory, and then N for needs improvement. If your child is getting a satisfactory S, or even a good, or even an excellent in any of these learning skills, you are able to ask, what evidence of this do you have, right? Show me, tell me, send those pictures to me, whatever way we can communicate, because I need to see where my child is at and help them build this foundational skills to where they want to go. We can move to the next one. And next is teacher comments. I don't know about you, but I have a lot within my family. I have my cousins, my nephews, they pull out the report cards and they go straight to the marks. And the marks are important, as Sharon mentioned. So you have from level 4 to level 1, level 4 being above expectations. Level 3 is the student is performing at expectation, the provincial expectations. Level 2 is almost meeting the expectation. Level 1 is their supports and their strategies that need to be put in place to help the student move towards achieving expectations all through. But besides the marks, besides the A's and the B's and the C's, what feedback is being given? And I'm going to tie that to what Soy said. The feedback shows evidence of how the teacher came to the conclusion of the assessment, of the mark, of the evaluation that they are given to your child. So if in the marking row or column, I should say, your child is getting a C, for example, but there's no evidence in the comment given, the feedback given, well, how does that translate? How is that evident? How are you sure that your child is performing at a C level? Well, the teacher should be able to support that with what are and I love how Soy had said it, right? There should be a range of assessments that's being done that the teacher can speak to show evidence of where the child is currently achieving or what academic achievement the child is currently at. And we should not be, it's very uncomfortable on both sides for many teachers who have not experienced parents asking them, show me the evidence, or show me where you're getting this evaluation from. It might be uncomfortable for them to share that data. However, it's okay to be uncomfortable. This is your child. They are your precious children. And it is important for you as a support system at home to be able to work alongside them as their teacher works alongside them in the classroom to get to an expected goal, whatever that goal may be. And we'll talk about goal setting just in a few minutes. So I love this quote that I pulled out. It said, feedback is one of the most powerful influences on learning and achievement, but this impact can be either positive or negative. So if all that has been inputted as a student mark without any highlight of their strengths, any acknowledgement of areas they've improved, any strategies given to help students in terms of next steps to move towards the expected or the desired result, well, that feedback is definitely negative. That feedback is, and I hate to say it, it's useless because it is not helping your child nor you as a parent to know what areas of intervention might be needed for student success. We can move to the next one. And I'll start off with the quote that says, effective feedback is most often oriented around a specific achievement the students are or should be working towards. When given feedback, it should be clear to students how the information they're receiving will help them progress toward their final goal. And I showed this image of what a secondary report card looks like in Ontario because it's quite different from the elementary report card. In the secondary report card, you see that there seems to be a greater emphasis on the breakdown of the mark itself, and then a box with maybe 1 or 2 or 3 lines for comments. However, effective feedback, as you, the parents, are reading through this and you're reading through this with your child, effective feedback should show and help the students receive information from their educator about where they're at and what they should be working towards. But as Soy said, this should not be the first time your child is seeing this feedback from the student, from the teacher, right? So whatever has been written in the report card, you can have your children read the report cards with you and say, well, you know, has this been something you've worked on in class? What are some ways this has been worked on in class? What are some ways this has been assessed? What are some ways your teacher has worked with you? What are some strategies that you have been shown, that have been modeled to help you in this area? Well, if your child is drawing a blank, yet the teacher is reporting on it in the report card, there's a discrepancy there, and that's a conversation that needs to be had. So I encourage you parents, pull your children in with you. I remember when I was younger, I just have to share this. I used to hate my parents when they would do it. I'm like, why? I'm in school all day. But then the next week, I'd see my mom just charging into the school. Well, she didn't charge. She's a gentle lady. But asking to meet with my teachers and asking them, well, my daughter said that you have never talked to her about this. Why are you putting this in her report card? And surprise, surprise, my teachers would come to me and say, well, you know, I need you to stay and we're going to work on this together. But if my parents hadn't done that with me, if they haven't sat with me and spoken with me about my report cards, that advocacy, even that just courage my mom needed or my dad needed to go in and speak to my teachers on my behalf, they would not have had that, right? So pulling them in, looking not just at the marks, but as well as the feedback and the comments being given gives a well-rounded view of where your child is at and where they need to move towards. Or is this feedback, is this mark, is this evaluation actually reflective of what your child is doing? Remembering that your child should have had a range of opportunities to be assessed, not just on a test, not just in a quiz, not just in a project. That's not where their marks are coming from. And last but not least, I want to talk about goal setting. And from my experience as an educator, this is that piece of paper at the end of the report card, both from K-8 and 9-12, that I chase students, absolutely chase them up and down the halls to get back from home. This comes with your progress report, and now there's only 2 term reports that goes home. This also comes with the term 1 report for in the elementary stream. But with the secondary students, this is always at the bottom of their report cards that come home. But many parents do not sit down to fill this out with their children. And the reason it is critical to do so is after having that conversation, not only about the evaluation, that mark that they're receiving, but also about the feedback given, the comments given on that mark, regarding that mark, then you can actually help your child or support your child in setting a goal. And I'm sure many of us have heard of SMART goals, and the next slide will speak to that in a moment. There we go, SMART goals. So it has to be specific, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be attainable, it needs to be relevant, and it needs to be timely. So what exactly do you want to accomplish? And it doesn't need to be anything major, right? It could be academic goal in terms of in this term or the semester, I want to get an A in math. But what does an A mean, right? What that is not specific enough. Do you want to develop your understanding in maybe multiplication? Maybe you want to have a deeper depth or deeper understanding in navigating or strategies when problem solving. What is the specific goal that you want to achieve? How do you measure that over time, over this term, over this school year, over the semester? How will you know that you're working towards your goal? How will you know you've achieved your goal, right? Is it possible? Is it possible to meet that goal at that specific timeline? Is it worth it? I want to get an A in phys ed. Why? Just so you can tell your friends you got an A in phys ed? Or maybe you want to learn, deepen your understanding on healthy and active living. Why do you want to work towards this goal? And also, what is that timeline for yourself? So you as a parent can keep your child accountable. Your child can also kind of nudge you, be like, hey, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whatever it may be, we're working towards this together, but also grafting in the teacher. So if we can go back one slide, when this goes back to the educator, now there's a contract, because we know that report cards are legal documents. They are contractual documents between the school board, the teacher, and the parent. So this goes back to your teacher, and it's a contract where you, the parent, and your child have laid out what you want, how you want to achieve it, and you're now bringing in the teacher support and helping your child move towards achieving that goal. It might seem it's literally a tiny piece of paper, but it's so powerful. So if this is filled in during progress report, when term 1 report cards come home, you can actually make a copy of this and take this and say, well, this is what my child has stated that they wanted to work towards. This is how they wanted to go about attaining this. As an educator, this is strategies that you've mentioned that you will help or you will implement in the classroom to help my child in working towards this goal. Now I'm looking at this other report card, and do I see evidence of that? Do I see that working? Are you actually working with my child? Are you actually supporting my child in the attainment of their goal? And they can set as many of these as they want, right? That's the beauty of education. And all of that together in terms of report card and assessment and evaluation enables your child to move and navigate the system in a way that's relevant to them, right? It also gives them an opportunity to reflect on their own learning. Does it work for me? Is there maybe other supports that I need that we then need to talk about because I am not able to access that in the classroom, and or I would gain more support. I would gain more, that's the word I'm looking for, confidence in getting these extra support outside of the classroom. And I'm not sure if I have one more slide. I don't think so. No, I do not. But with that, I want to tie it back to the Growing Success document. Yes, it is a big document in terms of page size, but it is very essential. It is very critical in understanding how assessment and evaluation is broken down in the Ontario system, because all teachers, any teachers recognized within Ontario, is bound by this document, is bound by the policies within this document when it comes to assessing and evaluating children. So you can make it I call it lazy reads. There are some books I'll read maybe 1 or 2 pages a week, and then I get back to it. But before I know it, in 3 years, I finished it. Yay. But you can make it a lazy read or pull out parts that are applicable to you at this time, so you have an understanding of what is expected of educators. And when you do have those parent and teacher interviews, when you do call to have a conversation, when you do send those emails, when you foster communication with your child's teachers, you can actually speak directly to what is expected of them, right? And they can't argue with what is expected of them. And that builds that confidence within you to make this an ongoing conversation.
Marvelous. Thank you so much, Iyanla, for tying it all in together. I really like how we started with Sharon with the in-depth of the different areas of assessment and types of assessment, the focus on secondary, and Sweeney bringing it back to the beginning with our kindergarten to elementary, kindergarten to grade 6, our elementary panel, and then Iyanla tying all the levels together, and especially that focus on learning skills, which we want to continually build and develop throughout their educational career. And the beautiful thing about learning skills is that's one of those areas as a learning partner where you can say, well, I can see how my child performs in responsibility, their organization, their initiative, their independent thinking skills, their self-regulation at home. So then you come even playing field sort of with the teacher and their own assessment in order to have those conversations and ask those critical questions. Speaking of questions, in the chat, it's been a bit quiet, which is marvelous. It tells me folks are still thinking and processing what they're hearing. As questions come to mind, please pop them in the chat. I've also put the link for the growing success document that was referenced. It will be included, like Sharon said, the link is in her portion of the slides and that will be sent to you. But in case anyone wants to pop open the link to the PDF and bookmark it, save it on your phone for when you're waiting at the doctor's office or waiting at the mechanic when your winter tires are being changed, or perhaps waiting your turn in the queue for your parent interview conversation following progress reports. You'll probably have read it before then, but just to have have that knowledge and keep going back to it. One of the reasons we decided to start our capacity building workshops this year with a theme of evaluation and assessment is because those progress reports are coming around the corner. Your child's teachers are now getting access to that, elementary and secondary, as well as they've been pulling together their conversations, observations, looking at product evaluation, and they're starting to fill in that information. And you will soon be receiving those links. And for folks who have IEPs, children with IEPs, it was mentioned by Sharon in her presentation. We last year did a capacity building workshop about IEPs and delving in depth into that. So if you have questions about that, I've posted here the form, our feedback form, which you're welcome to open now. But if you've got questions about IEPs, if you're wondering, a couple times folks have asked, will there be a session about IEPs? We did do one. We can share that information, those slides with you. Just leave your contact information in the form. And IEPs also will be coming home soon, as it is the start of the year, and they have to be produced within, I believe, the first 30 days of the school year. So teachers would have been working on that. They should have contacted you for your input as well. They would have contacted the previous year's teacher. And all of those parts and pieces are wrapped up into the assessment of your child. I'm taking a look at the chat. Thanks for the positive comments that folks have shared there. Does anyone have any questions? Please feel free to pop them into the chat. Oh, Iyanla,
yeah.
I see.
No, I just wanted to make, no worries. I just wanted to quickly make mention of a comment that was in the chat. A parent, I forget exactly whom, it said, I got a message about IEP, had not done it, but I'd fill it in by the end of this week. And the beautiful thing about an IEP is it's a living document. It's a working document. So if you have gotten a message before and you had not looked at it, or you're not given input, or you're not done anything with it, you can go back and talk to the CERT. You can go back and talk to the principal and say, hey, you know what? I want to look at this document again. I want to sit down and have the CERT team, so that's the special education resource team, sit with me and go through this document with me. So don't feel as though you missed a deadline or you missed a time. You can always request to go back and look at your child's IEP as often as you need to. It is meant to work for you and your child.
Absolutely. It's a living, working document. And one of the final pages is the consultation log. So you happen to call after, they had a chat with you, they will make note and make the changes as you need to. I see Claudette has a hand raised. I know Claudette has something to share. There is a question about streaming in the chat, and there's someone I think who is working on their questions. And the person who had asked about who had mentioned IEP said they're going to contact that teacher. So that's good too. The question, let's go to Claudette and I'll get to the question.
I want to answer the question first.
The streaming question
first. Definitely. We can answer those questions.
There we go. Okay. So the question about streaming, will streaming be reinstated in grade 10? Or I believe right now grade 9 is de-streamed, grade 10, there is streaming.
It's only grade 9 math. Currently, the announcement is only around grade 9 math. So right now, if your child in grade 9, the only de-streamed course they're taking right now is their math course, if they might have a next semester, but it's only the grade 9, and with hopes that it'll be, all of grade 9. And we don't know anything about grade 10. The announcement was very specific.
There's another question about, can you explain the difference between observation and products by providing examples of observation methods? So that I feel, all four of you could probably speak from your different areas of experience within the K-12 panels.
I was actually going to, that was why I put my hand up about, actually.
Why don't we do it? I was just going to talk about the streaming a little bit, that in many cases, even though grade 10 hasn't been de-streamed, that in our school board, we're saying prepare students for the grade 10 academic course. So otherwise, what would be the purpose of streaming of not, de-streaming in grade 9 only to be streamed again in grade 10?
I know some school boards are doing their own, like piloting, and I don't want to say PDSB, Peel, District School Board, and Toronto District School Board have also on their own decided to just not offer, say, an applied level, for example. So that may be happening for you, but that again, like in terms of province-wide, it's just grade 9 math at this time, hoping that, all kinds of crossing everything that will be extended. I hope that answers that question. I wanted to talk a little bit about the observations. So if I, for example, provide, and so two things I wanted to say. First of all, evidence should be happening every day. There should be evidence of learning every single day. Your child attended school that day, yesterday, day after that, they're sitting in a room and they're working on assignments. They're doing group work. They're creating questions. They're answering different tasks answering different questions and doing tasks in their classroom. So there will be daily evidence of learning, and so all of that could be considered observations. So in my time as a classroom teacher, there were times where students maybe didn't do well on tests or didn't do very well on an assignment, even though throughout the time that they were working in the classroom, I thought that they understood it and they demonstrated, like, I think this kid is, doing quite well in this area. And that was in my notes. And then maybe they got worried during the test, or maybe, the dog ate the assignment or whatever. Any observation that I had over time during the class is as long as they demonstrated that knowledge, I can use that. So even though it started as a formative assessment piece, and I saw with my own eyes that this child in their group conversation, or if when they were building blocks in the classroom, they demonstrated that knowledge, I can then go back and say, hey, you know what, on Wednesday, you did a really great job here on building blocks. On Friday, you didn't quite show me, but I can take what we learned on Wednesday. And I've asked for that same type of thing to happen for my own child, who's a grade 11 student now. And they say, you know, this didn't do well on the test or the assessment that day. Well, was there another? I saw that on the formative assessment because I went through the teach assist and I noticed that on the formative assessment, he did really well on this and demonstrated that he did understand it. Can we use that as a summative piece? So those are other examples of how observations, even a conversation I've been able to have with a student. Hey, come on over here. I saw this was your answer on the test. Talk to me about it. Let me go through this again. And we have a conversation. And I say, you know what? I think that you might, by what you're telling me, really understand it. Maybe during the test, you kind of misunderstood, or maybe you were hungry or you were tired, or all kinds of things could have happened. But now that you and I are talking about it, I see that you do understand it. And I can write down right now that this was the answer that you have. So there's, in terms of your professional judgment as an educator, you can use different conversations and observations and products to come up with that final assessment.
And I have to say quickly, Claudette, test anxiety is a real thing. I've been in a situation where I wrote the pamphlet and I'm put on the spot to talk about it. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. So, and test anxiety is a real thing, and your child should not be embarrassed or feel less than because of that. And as Claudette said, teachers are absolutely able to pull or to ask that child to verbally even talk about the summative assessment instead of having to sit and write. That's accommodations can be made. You don't necessarily need an IEP to make accommodations for students. So when we're talking about the observations, yeah, what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling, right? The student is doing this. It's tangible. I can see it. I can feel it. I could reference back to that. And then with evaluations is really that output that often is placed higher than others. And that's the tests and the quizzes. And it should not be, right? It should not be, should be the whole range that is included in coming up with a final, we'll call it a final mark to demonstrate that student's learning.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, Miss. I'm sorry to interrupt. I do have other questions, and I am thankful that our presenters had added there. Your name
is Mameka?
Yes. Good afternoon, evening.
Be a part of this workshop. And if I am not understanding what is being said, I think because this is the same decolonization we're talking about. But right now, you're actually just telling us, come and listen and say nothing.
I am sorry that you are feeling that way, and I understand. We do have other questions that were asked as well.
Sometime to be thought of as a summative assessment, because from what I'm understanding, the formative assessment should never be thought, but I'm understanding from Claudette that it could be. So this is what I'm asking for, a clarification.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, Claudette.
How are you? Yeah, so, and I was just typing the answer to your other question. So yes, so that is right. So, you know, in the learning plan, as the teacher was planning, they planned formative assessments. I've done this a lot. You have these different formative pieces along the way to help build, like we said, or improve upon those skills. And then you plan a final assessment. Sometimes, you know, as Diana was saying, that doesn't go well for students. That final assessment, for whatever reason, is not really a true indication of the learning. But what I noticed is that throughout the semester, throughout the unit, let's say, I saw that student demonstrate their skills and demonstrate those expectations during a formative assessment. I have in the past gone back and said, you know what, on this day we were practicing this skill and you showed that you understood it. And so it is similar to what, you know, was here in a summative, and I can move that forward. Yeah, I've done it. I've requested that be done right throughout all of my children's school careers. As long as that can be moved into say the teaching, well, there's different teaching, there's different sort of MARC programs, but as long as that can be moved over into that MARC program in those same categories, as long as it fits, then that can, that's totally possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think your other question, I know we're over time, but your other question around examples of equity or anti-racist informed assessments. So things like any equity-based learning assessment, for example, could be sort of a co-created learning goal, for example. So students and teachers work together to create an assessment. You know, this is, for example, obviously this is the curriculum expectation that we need to cover. How do you guys think that we might be able to achieve that? What are some really great ways? And so that's allowing now for the different learning abilities, learning styles, learning types to bring, you know, and to inform what that assessment looks like in the classroom. So that's one example. I know you probably hear Sharon mentioned CRRP, or culturally relevant practices. So that means making sure, in essence, it means a lot of things, but that's a workshop on its own, but making sure that children's experiences, their lived experiences, their understanding of the world around their environment is reflected in your teaching and learning. So again, it's reciprocal, like it's students also informing teachers about what they know, right? And that's very much something that we're doing from COVID, right? Like the assumption is that students were at home and they didn't learn anything. Students were learning a lot. We were all, I think our learning curves were, you know, we learned exponentially, maybe not necessarily what was expected, but it's finding ways of looking at what we did learn over the time and connecting it to curriculum at this point. And that's going to fill in those gaps, you know, so to speak. So all of that is sort of equity, you know, anti-racist informed types of practices.
I think as well, just ensuring that teachers recognize that your children are coming into the classroom with a wealth of knowledge, and they are looking at their assets. So what are they bringing to their learning? Not what are they missing, not the deficit lens that tends to be what teachers look at in some cases. So, you know, they're coming in as blank slates, and we know that's not the case. So when we're looking at anti-racist, decolonizing pedagogy or learning, we're talking about, okay, how are we looking at students bringing their whole selves, not trying to fit into any sort of mold that has been created that does not value our ways of knowing as Black people, our culture, our family dynamics, and all of those things that have helped us be wonderful human beings. How do we now ensure that the teacher sees your child in their entirety? And that's part of sort of an anti-racist decolonizing approach to learning, and looking at your child from an asset. So they're bringing something to the learning. They're not just coming as empty vessels that need to be filled up.
And I just want to make a quick plug here, if I can. On the Parents of Black Children website, the POBC website, there is a parent toolkit that speaks to a lot of these things, speaks to a lot of these questions to help navigate the system. And I want to try, and I want to link that to a question that was posted. It says, what tools can parents use to combat their children being encouraged or forced into lower education levels? Know the document, know where educators, know where teachers are pulling what they are expected to showcase, what they're expected to show evidence of from, right? And the quote says knowledge is power, but I personally have a little bit of a beef with that quote, because it's only powerful if you use it well, right? So the information you need is out there, and it might seem daunting or it might seem like a lot of work, but let's put it this way. There is somebody or a group of people that's going to have an impact and influence on your child's life at least until 18, right? And we're just asking, or we're just saying, hey, take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of your time. Find the time to understand how they are framing what they are teaching your child. And once you have that knowledge, you're able to go directly at whatever it is they say. If they come and say, well, your child needs to be applied, or your child needs to take this, we need to modify the expectation because your son or your daughter is not exhibiting evidence of being able to achieve the provincial expectation, you could say, whoa there, just wait a second. Let me speak to you about how you are meant to teach my child, and then let's revisit that conversation, right? You match knowledge with knowledge, and you hold everyone accountable.
Thank you. I think I'm going to try to answer two questions that I see here. One, which is asking about, again, about this stream. I just started typing it. So, but the school cannot tell you, or nobody that works at a school can tell you what your child should and can do. So if you believe that your child has particular skills or want your child to have particular skills, then they should take the courses that are offering those skills. So I think the assumption, leading up to this time was that, students say, well, I'm not good at this, so I will not take this course because I'm not good at this. That's not how it works. Teachers, educators, the intention is to teach skills in a course, to build aptitude within the course, to bring students to a place of achievement within a particular skill set in the course. So there is not a person on the planet that will be able to tell you how that child is going to do in that course if they haven't taken it. So it's just most important for us to be empowered as parents to select courses that we think are best. I've heard over and over, even from my own child, that, if he's taking or she is taking, academic in a particular stream, that maybe they should be taking applied in other subject areas. There is nothing that tells us that in an academic classroom, there's no way for anyone to know that in an academic classroom, your child will not succeed. No one has ever provided you with evidence, nor will they ever be able to. So the idea is to bring, if you believe that that is a space for your child, then you make those selections accordingly. And you can ask many people. You can ask, I think the focus is to think about what pathway does my child want to pursue potentially, because it changes. And gear the learning towards that pathway, as opposed to thinking about, well, I don't know if this might be too hard. And because I think that's kind of the way that we think about academic learning. Or maybe you say, well, my child doesn't want to go to university. But understand that even in the skilled trades or wherever, you do need to have a particular, skill set and aptitude in many different course pathways. And so I guess I'm completely biased, and I know you can hear it. Shoot for the stars. Shoot for the stars. In all courses that I've ever taught, and just like the panel here, we bring kids where they need to get to. How do we get them across? How do I get my kids at level 4? That's the question. And so that's the work that we have to do on our end as educators. And so I would encourage you that way. Sorry, and I'm talking too long. It's like we're way over. The other question was about choosing high schools. So in a particular school board, you'll have a list of high schools, and and there's opportunities to do some shopping around. There is a disclosure date, which now I'm just not sure what the disclosure date is. I believe in December, so around about December, there's a disclosure date as to which schools are closed for transfer. That could be for many different reasons. Maybe they're, you know, the population in that school is already, you know, capped, and that's possible. If there's a couple new elementary schools coming up in that area, they may not be able to accept students, but you will get a list that every board produces that says these are the schools that are open to transfer. The school in your area, if that's not your cup of tea, like where I live, I don't want I know what schools I want my children to go to. And so hopefully those schools are open to transfer, and then you can also inquire about the transfer process into those schools. And we had a presentation on specialized like regional programs that are offered in particular schools. That is, I think we're going to just load all of these on our YouTube because we've sent them out. Ayana had a really great idea, like, why don't we put them on our YouTube? So I think we should do that. And that way you will get a chance to look at that regional special programs presentation. All of that is on your school's website. So you should be able to see what specialized programs like IB right now, you should be hearing about IB or International Baccalaureate programs. Those deadlines are approaching, I believe, mid-November. So there's different programs. If your child has an interest in particular areas, you can lead them in that direction and always apply. They don't get in, they don't get in, always apply. Yeah, I think that's a great idea to just put yourself forward and see what happens.
Claudia, I do want to mention just quickly that not all school boards have that option. So we have catchments in the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, and you have to attend the school in your catchment area. A few years back, the idea was that each school would have a range of programs that would reduce the need to go across the town, but across the city to find your school home, so to speak. So in some cases, you're not allowed to, parents have applied for out of catchment, but it's not encouraged. There are specialized programs, International Baccalaureate, as you mentioned, French immersion, strings program in our school board, where maybe and arts programs. SHISM is another way that you can find yourself at a school that's out of your catchment area, where you're doing a specialist high skill major, where all of your courses are going towards, whether it's a construction specialist high skills major or a hospitality and tourism, and I think we have art and drama. And so there are a number of those specialized programs that would bring students away from their home school or their catchment school. So it depends on the school board. Our school board very much wants to sort of keep students in their catchment area as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. That is true. And if you would like to, you can fill out you can fill out the forms to transfer. And if it's turned down, then that's, that might happen. But I always encourage people.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know if we have a transfer.
A transfer process. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's you can apply to a program, but
I see, to the special programs.
Yeah. Got
it. Thank you. Thanks, Sharon.
That's a good point to raise, because when we did the specialized programs presentation, our presenter was speaking from years of experience with York Region District School Board. And a lot of the feedback we received was that folks were trying to look up those programs in their boards and they weren't sure. And with the wonderful ability of us to communicate and connect together from a wide area through Zoom, everyone's coming from their own particularity. So we can say that it's very important to know that you might have that possibility and to look for it. I mean, if we're not aware to look for it, then we don't know. But now we know that that is a possibility. But then within our boards, there might be certain constraints, and perhaps you might bring that up to the ministry. and raise that as an option, because it really comes down to a matter of equity, and equity of access, and at the end, equity of opportunity and pathways. The time is 8:53. I would like to take this moment in the pause to thank again Sharon and Soini and Yanuel Ola, as well as Claudette, our host, and all of our participants for coming and sharing their questions and sharing their views. I'm seeing the participant list has changed a little bit, so I understand that some folks have had to go. Thank you again for taking the time to listen and learn and grow with us and share from your areas. I know folks, as they were sharing their questions and comments, again, we're speaking from their experience, some as experienced educators, some as parents and guardians, some as community advocates. And we welcome all of those questions and comments, because as we all bring together our knowledge, we all help each other learn and grow. In this last few minutes, if you've got any other questions, feel free to plop them in the chat. The link for the feedback form is also in the chat as well. Thank you so much.
I'm wondering if at this point we have two wonderful people who are still on, but given that we have host controls, if there was anything else that they would like to add, we might just say good night now to the two people who are still here.
I'm gonna run and go get Ayana, guys.
Oh yeah.
I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.
Yes, yeah. So good night to Jackie.